right. Hello. Welcome back to the Can You Not podcast. Today I'm alone. This is Karmyn. I am alone. So Shianne had a wedding in her family, and I am covering the studio. So that's exciting. I've never done this before, so bear with me. So today's episode is on offense. I think it's very important. Both Shianne and I think it's very important to talk about the things that are so natural to us, but are often accepted as okay. And to be honest with you, a lot of the things that we accept as okay and they're just natural, we can't help it, they're wrong and they're sinful and they are not benefiting us in a spiritual way, to say the least. So, today's episode is on offense, and I feel like it kind of goes hand in hand with gossip, typically, but gossip is something we will be talking about in a future episode. So today we'll just be covering offense and basically, okay. So today I wanted to start off, obviously, with the Bible verse. I think, there is so much talked about in the Bible. Offense is so much talked about in the Bible. And let me just read this to you. Okay, so this is Proverbs. Proverbs 26, 20 through 22. Where no wood is, there the fire goeth out. So where there is no talebearer, the strife ceaseth. As coals are to the burning coals, and wood to a fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. The words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down to the innermost parts of the belly. Oh yeah, I think I said that was Proverbs 26, 20 through 22. Wow. Basically, here it is, just so simply, like, if only we could do this, right? It literally, here it says in the beginning, where there is no wood, the fire goeth out. So where there is no talebearer, the strife ceaseth. And I was just like, wow. Like, how much we are impacted by gossip. I think, just like the Bible says, the strife ceaseth. And I think that so much strife we know about on the daily wouldn't be there if it wasn't for gossip. And then also I wanted to read Psalm 34:13. Keep thy tongue from evil and thy lips from speaking guile. It's a very short verse, but very powerful and direct. I think it's so important to use our words in a way that is beautiful. It talks in other places in the Bible about our tongue being how does it say that? I don't recall how that verse goes, but basically just the power of the tongue is spoke about in the Bible so much. And it is so good to be aware of what our tongue can do. Let's just hop right on into this episode with those Bible verses in mind. I like to go ahead and state what the episode is about, and I think we kind of did that. And then I also like to, this is going to be really hard, recording without Shianne, because oftentimes when I'm like slipping up on words, I'll look at Shianne, because we normally do it on a Zoom setting. I'll look at Shianne and she'll like know what I'm saying, so then it encourages me to somehow finish my sentence. But what I was saying, so I like to go ahead and tell you what the episode's about, and then also give you the reasoning behind it. So obviously the reasoning for talking about offense today is to bring awareness to it. I think it is rampant. So number one reason is to bring awareness, and then number two reason, let's live unoffendable. Let's learn to live unoffendable. That would just be such a beautiful thing. And I think it would save so much hurt. Okay. So the first thing I have here, offense is is a lot more popular than we think. It's present in all of our lives. Just speaking for myself, I was shook and drawn back. I think it was a little over a year ago. Honestly, could have been longer than that. When I first heard like a really good message on offense. And I was, like I said, I was drawn back. I don't consider myself to be somebody, or I didn't prior to listening to this sermon I'm speaking of. I did not consider myself to be a readily offended person. I listened to that sermon and I was convicted. It was so, and is so prevalent in our everyday life. And yeah, I think offense and just being the offender are both just such ugly things. Today, let's call those out and bring some freedom to the subject. Offense is normal. Sometimes it can be inevitable. Those hard conversations have to be had as adults. And it isn't always easy. I think there is a way to go into the hard conversations with like a godly mindset and just asking ourselves, what are our intentions from this conversation? And also, if it is such a hard conversation, does it need to be talked about? Or is this a reflection of something that we are personally struggling with? Because sometimes, you have those hard conversations. And like I said before, they have to be had. Sometimes, depending on the scenario, those hard conversations have to be had. But I think, like I was mentioning there, we need to question ourselves. Who's going to benefit from this conversation? And is there any benefit? Because sometimes leaving those hard conversations when they aren't necessary causes so much more issue, so much more hurt, and doesn't have the benefit that would make the hard conversation worth it. That's something I ask myself quite often, Is it possible that I'm having this conversation to benefit myself? If so, it's probably not going to be worth it in the end. I also think too, and this is a really interesting part of offense. So the mental injustice, the things we perceive. So mental injustice is sometimes literally things that we think up. Sometimes we think people have something against us. And let me give you an example, because this was very confusing for me. It could be confusing to people listening today. Maybe we don't see somebody for a while, or maybe we haven't communicated with a family member as regularly as we once did. Life changes and there's busy seasons for everybody, and you don't have that close connection, or you don't feel like, you might be feeling like you're drifting apart from somebody. Our mind often goes to a place of, finding reasoning for that. And sometimes there isn't reasoning for it. Like I said, life gets busy and there's busy seasons for everybody. But our mind still wants to find reason. And we start thinking of these horrible things that they could possibly be thinking towards us. And sooner or later, we believe that. That exact thought, oh, I haven't seen this person in a while. Oh, they looked at me this way. Oh, they didn't look at me this way. Oh, they didn't wave at me at church. Wave to me at church. All those things. And our mind just begins to believe that root that we sow of, they have aught against me. We begin to believe that. And that is a huge reflection of our personal self. So good, so healthy to be aware of that. The devil delights in this place. He sows discord. He oh man, he plays in that area of discord. And our brain too feeds into this. Naturally speaking, our mind does want to find a reasoning for whatever relationship barriers come into play. And many times they're just temporary. But our brain still is just confused and wants to be validated. And that's just a popular thing as well. And I think a way to be aware of that is obviously just to take our thoughts captive. What are we thinking? And are we believing our every thought? Because our mind is constantly going. Man, I can be having 3 thoughts at once almost. And that's a blessing of the Lord for creating us in this way. And He obviously created us in this way so that we can handle multiple things at once. And it can be such a blessing. But so healthy to take those thoughts captive and really consider, what are we thinking about and what's making us think about this. So I wanted to touch on being the offender, and we talked about taking our thoughts captive. So important, if you're the one talking in any situation, to take your words captive. Obviously, you saw Shianne and I learning to talk together over recording, and it's been a challenge to learn to keep our words captive, and it's been funny. It's been funny. But where I was going with this is your words determine the respect you get. And, when we're readily speaking, a lot of times we don't even have a record of what we spoke of. It leaves so much room for damage and hurt to the people we're talking to. And I think it is important to remember when you're speaking that different people, especially if it's in a group setting and it's not one-on-one, there's going to be individuals there that have different levels of sensitivity. They're going to have different sensitivities to the subjects you're talking on. Maybe they've gone through different things that have led them to have these sensitivities. So it's just good to be aware of your surroundings, and, we never want to intentionally hurt people. Do we know what we're saying? Do we know that it's true? And if we don't know if it's true, we need to make sure we either don't say it, or if the circumstances leads where you have to talk about something that you're not 100% positive on, you need to share that you are not 100% positive on the subject. More times than not, you're better off not sharing anything unless you know it's factual. And then also being the one offended. Forgiving doesn't mean that the wrong was right. When we forgive that person for wronging us, and sometimes we are wronged and we are offended because of that wrong, and it is valid. I would be willing to bet that, generally speaking, offense is invalid. I truly believe that. I think offense is, more times than not, it is invalid. But just speaking on that moment when you are offended and your offense is valid, and it was a deep hurt that was caused, maybe by someone you're close to, maybe a family member deeply hurt you, we're called to forgiveness. And forgiveness doesn't mean that the wrong they did to you is now right, but it means that we forgive them because, Christ forgives us so readily, and we ought to forgive the people that trespass against us. It also relieves us from retaliation. And I did have a Bible verse I wanted to share on that. Romans is such a wise book. There's so much to learn from the book of Romans. So today we're talking about Romans chapter 12, verses 19 through 21. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in doing so, thou shalt reap coals of fire on his head. Wow. Yeah, there's many places in the Bible that talk about our enemies and, we're supposed to turn the other cheek and different things like that. And it just causes you to go into prayer like, Lord, what does this actually look like? How do I actually promote this in my life? It goes against every level of pride we've ever had. It talks in the Bible, feed your enemies, pray for them. All these things, and it shows the heart of the Lord, obviously. It shows his heart towards people that don't love him and the people that do love him. And it causes us to really go into prayer. How do we become this person? And God's the only one that can show us and that can give us that grace that he tells us to administrate to everybody else, and especially to our enemies. God's the only one that can allow us to have that grace. I also have to say something else. This is random. This is such a weird phrase, but we have to talk about it today. The phrase, please don't be offended. It's such a funny thing to say. I'm literally chuckling at this because it is such a bizarre thing to me. And here's why. So I think the saying, please don't be offended, has been abused. I've seen it used in such a positive way. That person that is coming from a heart of respect and, truly doesn't want what they have to say or feel led to say to offend you. And they'll say, hey, I got to say this to you, and it may not be the easiest thing to hear. So please don't take it in a negative way. Please don't be offended. And that's the proper way of using it, I think. That's the proper way of using that term. But this is where it's been abused. The person that actually wants you to be offended, they're also going to say, please don't be offended, but your shirt is ugly. I'm sorry. Just the fact that you said, please don't be offended, has now stirred up more offense. It's bizarre. And I think it's good just to ask it. Once again, what are our intentions here when saying this? And that's just a funny one. It's honestly kind of one of those hot takes. We did the hot takes episode, and the phrase, don't be offended, should not be used. Or, just kind of a funny it's a weird phrase. Can be used right and can be used in a positive way, but more times than not, it is used in a negative way to cause offense. I really see that often, and I'm curious if you guys do as well. Yeah, that's just a funny one. Just like we talked about gossip. Gossip goes hand in hand with offense, but pride does as well. Pride goes hand in hand with offense. And pride is, it's just such a hard thing to fight against. And it's one of those things, it's natural to us, but it's so good to remember we are naturally broken people that need the Lord's guidance every step of the way. So yes, it's natural to have pride. Yes, it's natural to be offended. It's even natural to accidentally cause offense. But even though it's natural, we are naturally a broken people, and it doesn't make it right. Just because something is, it can almost feel like it's inevitable and it's so hard to go around and, all those things. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't, feeling offense and harboring those feelings, though it's natural, it doesn't make it right. And I challenge your insecurity here. Is your insecurity causing you to be easily offended? That is going to be a stumbling block your whole life if you're letting that level of insecurity cause you to be offended. You don't need anybody's permission. to live life a certain way. The only accountability you need is accountability from the Bible and your spouse. It's up to you to decide how much weight you give somebody's words. And at the end of the day, we ourselves decide if we become offended. And that's where we can't blame it on the offender for making us offended, because at the end of the day, it's going to go back to our pride and how much weight we give somebody's words. And you cannot align your life with every person. You can't even align your life with every family member. And God doesn't ask us to do that. He gives us the Bible and says, follow me, follow this guide, and your life will be full. You will live in freedom. I think too, it's important to admit you're wrong, or even just admitting to someone, hey, listen, I'm going to say things wrongly. Please be forgiving. Or please tell me if I cause offense. It allows others to have proper expectation. And it gives them a glimpse of your heart and your struggles. I think, too, if people were to come to you and say, hey, that in this area, when you said this, you offended me, you caused hurt in my life. It's so important to say, hey, thank you for telling me. I never intended to cause this harm. Or I wasn't aware that you felt this way or had sensitivities this way. It's so important to say, thank you for telling me. And it just shows that you're open to assess your heart, intentions, forgiveness, and even patience levels. It seems when patience levels are low, the irritability level can be high. And irritability can lead so easily to offense. It's just a step away. The quality of our life is due to our response from offense. And I think I'm just going to leave that quote right there because it's so accurate, needs no explanation. The quality of our life is due to our response from offense. Because once again, offense is prevalent every day. And we get to decide if we become offended. The challenge here is to learn to take nothing personally. Remember that you don't need others' permission. You actually don't even need another person's stamp of approval in your life. And the challenge is, do you know freedom? So, Shianne will be back with me in the next episode, per the usual schedule. It's been fun to do this alone, but also very challenging. A little learning curve for sure, and I appreciate your patience. So I want to end today with a prayer, and I think the subject we're talking on, becoming unoffendable, and also guarding our mouth so that we don't offend. I think both of those things we have to be in prayer on daily, so that the Lord is our guide in these things. So let's end today's episode with a prayer. Dear Lord, I come before you today and just want to say thank you for giving us our mouth and for giving us our mind, that we are able to use it in such a way, with your guidance. We're able to use it in such a way that we can encourage and glorify your name. I pray for the power of freedom over offense. I pray that you guard our hearts in a way that leaves no room for offense, and you give us that level of security that can only come from you. That, again, just it leaves no room for offense.